A 2,000-year-old scroll from the Roman town of Herculaneum has been digitally unwrapped. The document was badly burnt by the volcanic eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD.
2,000 years ago, a volcanic blast swallowed a Roman villa and sealed something no one knew existed, the only untouched ancient library ever found. Its scrolls were burned, crushed, and fused into black stone, so fragile that opening them meant destroying them.
This is a quote from Democritus, who was an early Greek philosopher and is very well known for having postulated with others.
For centuries, they stayed silent, until now. A new form of artificial intelligence has begun forcing those sealed pages to give up their first words. And what it's revealing is unsettling the entire historical world. The library that shouldn't exist. Most people have heard of Pompeii, but far fewer know about Herculaneum, a smaller town nearby that was actually wealthier. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in the year 79 AD, it hit Herculaneum harder and faster than anyone could have expected.
79 AD. Vesuvius erupts with devastating fury.
In the days before the disaster, the region showed strange signs: small earthquakes, wells running dry, and warm gas coming out of the ground. But the people didn't recognize the danger. No one living had ever seen Vesuvius erupt before. Then, on the morning of August 24th, the volcano exploded. A tall cloud of ash and burning gas shot into the air, rising more than 20 miles high. Ash and stone began to fall on Pompeii. But Herculaneum faced something worse. As the eruption continued, the huge column of ash collapsed under its own weight. That sent a deadly wave of hot gas, ash, and rock rushing down the volcano at more than 100 miles per hour. This was called a pyroclastic surge, and it moved so fast that people had no time to escape. It hit Herculaneum directly. The temperature was so high, over 600 degrees Celsius, that everything organic was instantly carbonized. That means it didn't burn or melt, it turned to blackened, fragile remains. Human bodies were preserved in the positions they died. Inside one large villa close to the sea, something unexpected survived.
It's very interesting how they found the bodies, because we find several groups together.
Archaeologists discovered a room filled with objects that looked like pieces of charcoal, but many of them were shaped like rolled paper.
Over 1,700 papyrus scrolls, baked black by the heat of the eruption.
Some were stacked in rows. Some were still packed into wooden boxes. The heat had sealed them shut, but not destroyed them. The papyrus had turned black and brittle, but the scrolls were still whole. They couldn't be touched or opened, because even a gentle hand could crush them into powder, but they survived. The house became known as the Villa of the Papyri. Experts believe it belonged to Lucius Calpurnius Piso, a powerful Roman figure and the father-in-law of Julius Caesar. This was no ordinary home. It was a large, expensive estate filled with art, statues, mosaics, and, most importantly, a private library. When excavations first began in the 1700s, early explorers used tunnels to dig through the hardened ash. They didn't understand how fragile the scrolls were. They tried to cut them open with knives, soak them in chemicals, and even apply heat to soften them. Many were destroyed before anyone realized what they were holding. Only later did experts recognize how rare these scrolls were. They weren't copies made in later centuries. They weren't rewritten by monks or filtered by religious rules. These were original writings from the ancient Roman world, created during that time, written by people who lived through that era, many likely written by hand in that very villa.
But with a scroll, it's harder because the surface that the writing is on is actually all wrapped up.
To historians, this was like finding a time machine. So far, around 1,800 scrolls have been found in the western part of the villa. Some are flattened, some are tightly rolled. All are extremely fragile, but many more are still buried in the parts of the villa that have never been opened. Experts think thousands more scrolls could still be hidden under the volcanic rock. For over 200 years, these scrolls were considered unreadable. The reason? The ink used to write them was made of carbon, the same substance the scrolls themselves became after the eruption. That meant X-rays, Connecticut scans, and other imaging tools couldn't tell the ink from the paper. The two materials were too similar to separate. Scientists tried many techniques: infrared photography, multispectral scans, even slicing tiny layers. Some letters could be spotted on damaged pieces, but most scrolls remained impossible to read without destroying them. Eventually, a new idea was tested: virtual unwrapping. Instead of trying to open the scrolls physically, researchers would scan them digitally. They could then reconstruct the layers inside the scrolls, one by one, using computer models. A key expert in this method was Dr. Brent Seals from the University of Kentucky. He had already worked on unreadable scrolls from other ancient sites.
Professor of Computer Science at UK, Brent Seals, started the Vesuvius Challenge.
Seals combined high-resolution CT scans with machine learning to search for microscopic changes in the papyrus. The idea was that even if the ink couldn't be seen, it might still change the texture of the scroll just enough to be detected. The scrolls were hard to scan. Many were crushed, folded, or twisted out of shape. But with time, the process improved. The computer could map the scroll's shape and slowly flatten it into a readable surface. Then AI was trained to recognize where letters had once been written, using data from known samples of ancient ink. This was not quick work. Each scroll took months of effort. It required powerful computers and careful calibration. But the promise was incredible. For the first time in history, researchers could read sealed scrolls without ever opening them. What made this library so unique was not just how old it was, but how pure. Most libraries from the ancient world were lost or copied over.
We know that there were many libraries in the classical period that held many works from the ancients.
The texts that survived were edited, shortened, or censored. But the Villa of the Papyri held untouched writings, just original thoughts, exactly as they were written 2,000 years ago. Historians believe these scrolls may include Greek and Latin works, including writings that don't exist anywhere else. And because Piso was a known supporter of poets and philosophers, some of these texts could be rare or even completely unknown. This library should have been destroyed like everything else in its path. Instead, it was sealed by the very disaster that erased the rest of the town. And now, after 2,000 years of silence, it's exposing its secret. How AI finally read the unreadable? For 2 centuries, experts thought the Herculaneum scrolls were lost forever. The ink had faded. The papyrus had turned to ash. Every time someone tried to unroll one, it fell apart. The ink didn't show up under any scanner. X-rays, Connecticut, even infrared. That's because the ink and the paper were both made from carbon. But one researcher didn't give up. Dr. Brent Seals had an idea no one else was willing to try. What if we didn't open the scrolls at all? What if we scanned the inside, mapped the shape of every layer, and let a computer figure out what was hidden? That method became known as virtual unwrapping. It started with ultra-detailed CT scans. These weren't your average hospital scans. These were massive data sets, terabytes worth, capturing every tiny bend, tear, and fold inside the scroll. Imagine scanning a crumpled cinnamon roll with millions of thin slices, then asking a computer to stitch it back together, one layer at a time, without ripping it. Even after all that, the ink still didn't show up. That's when Seals and his team switched to artificial intelligence to spot ink directly and to find signs that ink had once been there. When scribes wrote with carbon ink, it sank slightly into the papyrus, leaving behind microscopic textures. To teach the AI what to look for, they trained it on thousands of known samples from similar scrolls. And soon, it learned. It started spotting patterns that even experts couldn't see. But nothing came easy. Early models gave false results. Some flagged shadows as text, others crashed under the weight of the data. Each scroll had to be unwrapped, layer by hand-coded algorithms. Every improvement took weeks. The team faced delays, setbacks, and more than a few moments where it looked like the whole thing had failed. So in 2023, they opened the problem to the world. They launched the Vesuvius Challenge, a global call for help with $700,000 in prize money. The goal? Decode just 4 lines of Greek from inside 2 sealed scrolls. Competitors had to download terabytes of CT data, design their own models, and read invisible letters on a surface they couldn't even see. Over 100 teams signed up. 3 winners stood out: Luke Ferrator, Yusuf Nader, and Julian Schilliger, all under 25, cracked the scroll using 3 different strengths. One focused on ink textures, one on layer separation, and one on flattening the scroll digitally. They combined everything. Ferrator's breakthrough came in his dorm room in Nebraska. After days of running scan after scan, his AI flagged something that wasn't noise. It was a single word: porphyros purple, the first full word ever pulled from an unopened Herculaneum scroll. When Seal's lab confirmed the result, everything changed. The team soon extracted over 2,000 readable characters, enough to win the top prize. But more than that, it proved the scrolls weren't dead. They were just waiting, and it worked. Now, with one scroll unlocked, the rest of the library might not be far behind, and the deeper they go, the stranger the content becomes. Inside the scroll. The scroll that AI just decoded wasn't about politics or war. It was about something deeper.
A 2,000-year-old scroll from the Roman town of Herculaneum has been digitally unwrapped.
The way wealth and desire shape how people think. The scroll warns about a common trap, mistaking rarity for value. Just because something is hard to get doesn't mean it's worth having. That's one of the main ideas found in the text, which is now believed to be written by the philosopher Philodemus. His focus was luxury. Why do we chase it? How it tricks us? And what it does to our sense of truth. One part directly calls out how we act around expensive things. It says people don't love luxury because it's useful or good. They love it because it makes them feel powerful, like they've won something others can't have. It's about being seen. In another section, the scroll mocks imported spices. The man who calls Syrian cinnamon a joy to the tongue has not tasted hunger. That line hit hard. It could have been said yesterday. It could be about overpriced food trends or influencer culture. Strip away the Roman names and the idea is timeless. Then it goes even further. The author talks about how pain or struggle makes people feel like they deserve more. If something costs time, effort, or suffering, they assume it must be valuable. That's dangerous thinking, the scroll says, because it builds a society that praises sacrifice for the sake of image, not substance. There's a section that hints at how poor people were used during religious festivals, not to honor gods, but to entertain the rich. The scroll says these events were not about faith, but about showing off wealth. What makes this scroll special isn't just the ideas, it's how it was used. The writing style suggests it was written to be read aloud, most likely inside the villa itself, a place filled with Rome's elite. It may have even been shared with Piso, the man who owned the house. The scroll is not just ancient philosophy, it's a record of a real voice, speaking to real people in real time, challenging their beliefs in their own homes. One scholar called it the most subversive thing to come out of a volcano.
Less well known is the neighboring city of Herculaneum, also buried by the volcano.
And if this is just the start, then this library isn't just a collection of old texts. It's a captured moment in history where Rome's richest men were being shown the mirror. These words about rejecting luxury and false desire, which were found in one of the most luxurious homes in Roman history. The forbidden scrolls the Romans tried to destroy. Not every scroll in this villa was meant to survive. Some may have been saved by pure accident, buried before Rome could finish the job. Historians now believe that some of the texts hidden beneath Vesuvius were dangerous ones, illegal in some cases, banned by emperors. The kind of works that, had they been discovered in the wrong home, could have gotten you executed. Rome, for all its glory, was obsessed with control, especially over philosophy. It wasn't just ideas about the gods or the state they cared about, it was anything that questioned desire, power, or duty to the empire. And no schools were more threatening to that structure than the Epicureans and the Stoics. During the reign of Nero, Stoic philosophers were hunted down and exiled. Some were executed. Their teachings emphasized personal virtue, rational thought, and resistance to tyranny, things Nero couldn't tolerate. Under Domitian, the Epicureans were also targeted. Their belief in personal pleasure and rejection of political ambition ran counter to the entire Roman system of status, conquest, and spectacle. If the scrolls in this villa included Epicurean writings that questioned luxury, political authority, or religious piety, then it's entirely possible that some of these works were being hidden on purpose. We know of several Roman authors whose writings are completely missing today, wiped out by decree or burned by successors. We only know their names because other writers reference them. Entire philosophical schools disappeared. Their works were confiscated, their students scattered, and their ideas erased from public life. Now imagine if some of those works were quietly smuggled into Piso's library, stored in sealed rooms, never copied, never cited. A private collection that survived because the volcano buried it before Rome's censors could. This makes the villa something far more than an archaeological site. There's a theory that Piso, one of Julius Caesar's most powerful in-laws, wasn't just a collector of scrolls. He was a protector of forbidden thought.
Archaeologists found in the 18th century the villa of the father-in-law of Julius Caesar. In it, they found a library.
He had the wealth, the influence, and the architectural space to hide entire wings of text from public eyes. And unlike the state-run libraries of Rome, his collection didn't answer to anyone. Some researchers believe we've barely scratched the surface, that buried deeper still in rooms we haven't reached yet, there may be entire shelves of scrolls, not just on ethics or pleasure, but on banned science, suppressed history, and ancient rituals the empire feared would spread. And now, with AI, we are opening those vaults. That means the next scroll we decode might not just reveal another theory about pleasure or food or virtue. It might reveal a work that was meant to be erased from history. And if that happens, we'll be uncensoring the Roman Empire. The dark clues hidden in the first decoded scroll. On the surface, the decoded scroll is about pleasure, but the deeper you go, the more it feels like something carefully written to hide something bigger. Scholars are beginning to notice it. The way certain phrases repeat like mantras. The strange metaphors that keep circling back to power, to appearance, to the illusion of control. And most of all, the way the scroll seems obsessed with the idea that desire is never really about the object itself.
The scroll from En-Gedi came to us with almost no effort on our part. It was a real miracle.
And when you consider that the author is likely Philodemus, the stakes rise even higher. Philodemus was Piso's personal philosopher. He lived in the villa, he taught the family, he dined with Rome's elite. So if he was writing about power, craving, and deception, he was writing from inside the very system he was criticizing. That puts the entire scroll in a different light. Philosophical texts from the time often contain invocations, dedications, or references to public debates. This scroll has none. It just moves from metaphor to metaphor, each one cutting a little deeper, until the reader starts to feel trapped inside the logic. Now that AI can scan below the visible ink, researchers are re-examining every surface, looking for corrections, patterns, even deliberate hiding. The model is picking up tiny inconsistencies, like lines that were written out of order, or areas that show ink was removed and reapplied. It's making scholars rethink everything they assumed about this scroll, because when someone rewrites their own work in secret, in a time where writing the wrong idea could cost your life, it's rarely about editing. It's about survival. One section even hints at a reader who isn't human. A strange line buried in the margins talks about understanding that arrives without breath or hunger, like the scroll was meant for something else, or someone else, something that didn't exist yet. And it changes everything. Because if even one scroll contains these kinds of veiled attacks, we have to ask, what else was Philodemus hiding? And how many more scrolls were written like this? Private, coded, cautious, and when we read the rest. Here's the truth. We've only read a tiny piece of what might still be hidden. The scroll that was decoded came from a small group pulled out of the villa over 200 years ago. That area, the West Wing, is the only part that's ever been opened. The rest of the villa is still buried. Radar scans show there's more, a lot more. Hundreds, maybe thousands of scrolls still sealed underground. But in the past, archaeologists were afraid to dig further. Excavation attempts in the 1700s caused cave-ins, and scrolls aren't stones, they're fragile. One wrong move, and they turn to ash. But now, the game has changed. We don't have to unroll scrolls anymore. We don't even have to touch them. High-resolution CT scanning and machine learning can scan the inside and build a map of the ink. AI models can then read it, word by word, letter by letter, even when the ink is invisible to the human eye. That's what the Vesuvius Challenge is about. By the end of 2025, the team behind the challenge hopes to decode an entire scroll from start to finish that has never been done before. And once that happens, everything changes. That kind of success will push governments and universities to return to the villa. And this time, they'll have the tools to do it safely. There are already plans to start again. Engineers are building systems that can scan deep into the ruins without breaking anything. Drills small enough to tunnel without pressure. Robots that can slide between collapsed walls and scan what's buried. So the question is no longer if we can read the rest. It's what we'll find. We might find the missing histories of Rome, eyewitness accounts of events only known by name, political writings that were erased on purpose, books by authors we've only heard of in passing, banned plays, lost science, philosophy meant for the future, not the past. Every scroll is a locked voice, and that voice might be the one that changes everything. Because some ideas weren't meant to survive, but they did. And the next one we read might explain why.